Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This particular video is a top 50 video. Apparently, these type of videos have been going around in the comic book community, and I figured I would throw in my lot with a couple of differences. Now, the top 50 books that I'm going to show you in this video are not necessarily my top most expensive books. Okay, I wanted to try to shy a little bit away from that. Although you will see some pretty expensive books in this particular video, in this top 50, I wanted to try to show some of the top 50 books that I think are top 50 worthy, just other than because of their value. Such categories is because I like the cover, or I like the story, or I think it's a pretty cool first appearance. And there are also some that are because they're valuable. I wanted just to change it all up and have a good mix of all of those categories in this top 50 instead of just going from 50 to all the way to number one being the most expensive book. I wanted to change it up a little bit. That also being said, that the very last book I show in this video is not the number one of all these categories I'm talking about. I just mix and match. I grabbed 50 books that I think were pretty cool, based on some of the things I just told you, and I just mix and matched. So the very last book isn't the most important one in this video, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so I'm going to start. It was really fun going through this. Now, there are some categories like you expect to see some Tales from the Crypt in this video, but I only limited it to a couple of books because, in truth, I like a lot of the Tales from the Crypt books and a lot of other titles, but I tried to limit as all those types of books in this particular video because I wanted to make room for some other titles that I sometimes don't talk about. So we're going to start with my top 50 books. Again, it's not necessarily because they're the most valuable or anything like that. It's just because I think these are some worthy books that could be in a top 50 video. All right, and I'm not going to count down with number 50, 49. I'm just going to go. Trust me, there are 50 books here. Whenever I try doing that, I get lost. But I'll try to keep a number count in the bottom corner. All right. So here we have Mad number 3. I'm not going to talk too much about these because it's a 50 book video. I don't want this to go on for 45 minutes. But Mad number 3. I love that cover. I've always loved that cover. And I like the early Mads. I didn't like it too much when it became a magazine, but that's one of my favorite covers in that run. Avengers 57. How can you not like this cover? This is a great cover. And it's also the first appearance of Vision, yes, but it's definitely one of the nicest covers I feel in the early Avengers run. And here's the next one. Batman 227 is a famous Batman cover, famous swipe of Detective Comics 31. Need I say more? Oh, look at this one right here. Comico Primer number 2, First Grendel. Now, again, as I go through these, yes, you're going to see some pricey books, but there are other books in here that I think are worthy to have in somebody's collection because they're cool for various reasons. Because of cover, because of first appearance, because of an event inside the story, or it's a really good story, or it's meaningful to me, or it might be meaningful to somebody else in my view. It's a bunch of different things. Okay, here's another one. I think this one's great. I also was able to get James O'Barr's signature. I think this is in 2016. Yeah, April 16th, 2016 at East Coast Comic Con. Really cool. And I think along with that, you need the others. It's a mini-series. Crow number 2. Crow number 3. 3, yeah. Losing, already can't count. And Crow number 4. I think that the Crow, the mini-series, the first mini-series, I think is a fabulous collection of books for anybody to have in their top 50. And here we have the very first 2 Marvel comic books that I have ever purchased. Well, X-Men, I should say. X-Men 141 and 142. Days of Future Past. 2 high-grade copies. I like this one a lot. Here we go. Here's one that's not so valuable. Conan the Barbarian King Size Annual number 2. This is a reprint of the Weird Tales, more or less, Weird Tales story, which is Conan's first appearance of the Phoenix and the Sword. And it's also the first full appearance of the character Conan's arch nemesis, Tothamon. Here's another cool one that I really like, and I think this is pretty cheap too. Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 4. It's the first appearance of the Rat King. So those of you that grew up watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series, you remember the Rat King. And I remembered the Rat King, and when I started collecting Turtles books, that was one of the things that I wanted to get, one of the first appearances that I wanted to add to my collection. Pretty cool to have. Here's another one. This one's a little bit on fire right now, as of May 2021. I love the cover. I mean, I'm not the biggest Dazzler fan. I'm going to be honest with you. But I love the cover. Always love that cover. It's one of my favorite Uncanny X-Men covers from that era. Was it the late bronze era? Here's one I really like. Marvel Spotlight number 2, first appearance of Werewolf by Night. I think Marvel is going to be focusing on some supernatural elements in the upcoming phases. I think that's a pretty good one to have if you like supernatural, as I do. This one I definitely got to add here. Spawn number 1. Again, it's another example of a book that's not really that valuable. I mean, I know the newsstands go for a little bit more, to be honest. But a really cool book. I mean, War Against Crime, number 11. I love mummy covers. I mean, mummy covers are some of the horror covers that I really, really like, and this is my favorite mummy cover, at least the favorite mummy cover that I have in my collection, War Against Crime 11. Here we have an X-Men book, X-Men 57. Again, it's not really a big issue. It shouldn't be that expensive. But it's the Return of the Sentinels. And you have Neil Adams drawing the artwork. And I thought that the storyline was really, really good. I liked it a lot. Here's another Conan number 1. Yeah, I know this one's getting a little bit hot right now, but I have a 5.0, right down the middle, mid-grade book. So it's not as expensive as others, but for those of you that like the sword and sorcery type books, you enjoy that, you can't go wrong with Conan number 1. And here is a truly fantastic, no pun intended, cover. Fantastic Four number 49, first full appearance of Galactus. You know, this is another book I think for many years wasn't really that expensive. It wasn't really that valuable. I mean, there was money attached to it, of course, but I think it was ignored for a long time, a little underrated. And then now, only the last 2 years, it's really started to pick up in price. And here's another one of my favorite ones. Like I said, I like supernatural. I like things of that nature, horror elements. And even though Man-Bat is not supernatural, there's something horror-ish about a man turning into a creature, like something like a werewolf, like with Werewolf by Night, and vampires, and giant bats. Classic cover. Here's 2 of my favorite early X-Men books. Number 12 and number 13, The Introduction of the Juggernaut. There's something about the Juggernaut that I like, and maybe some of you can relate to it. I think that I'll talk while I'm grabbing this next pile. One of the reasons why I like the Juggernaut so much is because he's a pretty straightforward villain. He comes up, he just shows up, he destroys a bunch of things, he seems to be almost impossible to defeat, and then the X-Men really got to trigger, or anybody else who's fighting him, have to really try to figure out how they're going to beat him. Pretty straightforward. There's nothing too complicated with him. And I think that, sometimes in a series like X-Men where you have a lot of complicated issues, a lot of complicated characters, it's cool every now and then to have a villain like Juggernaut where you don't have to think too much. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why I like that character so much. And those 2 books I showed you I like the artwork on those covers, especially number 12. And speaking of artwork, I don't think anybody could deny, if you have this in your collection, it's definitely a top 50 worthy. And this is like Silver Surfer 4. This is another one that has been known for many years to be a great cover. But it's only within the last couple of years the book has really shot up in value. It was always kind of pricey. Nothing too bad. Nothing that could break the bank. I have an 8.0 copy. And, I paid under $200 for that a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm not saying that to brag. It's been that price for years. At the time of when I paid for that, it was probably about right. It wasn't like I got a deal on it. But now it seems like with everything is going up, it's now so much more. Who knows? Who knows if it goes back down, whatever. But regardless of price and all that stuff, it's a very well-known cover and a great one to have in your collection. Now, this one's pricey. I think this is the priciest one I'm going to show so far. It might be the priciest one in this video. But there's no denying that this is a great classic cover. And if you have in your collection, definitely a top 50 or a top 100, whatever number you add to it, worthy to be in those categories. Crime Suspense Stories, number 22, the decapitation cover. There's plenty of cover swipes on that. There's a Wolverine one where he's holding Sabretooth's head, and so many others. But it caused a lot of controversy when it came out. Now here are two more X-Men books. Again, not really worth that much, but I got them in high grade because I really, really like them. We have X-Men 123 and 124. The reason why I think these are so cool is because I used to like the Super Nintendo game X-Men and Spider-Man in Arcade's Revenge. Well, that game was pretty much got its motivation, got its influence, if you will, from those books. There were some changes, of course, with characters and scenarios. This came out, in the late 70s, and that game came out in the early 90s, so there were bound to be some changes. Here's another one that I just love. I love this cover so much. Amazing Spider-Man, number 9. First appearance of Electro, but just love the way Spider-Man's reaching out to grab Electro to stop him, and gets a big surprise. Vault of Horror number 16. This was the very first Golden Age book I bought. A lot of great stories in this one. Stories that I remember from the HBO show. Very happy to add that in my collection. Here's one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt books. I've mentioned this before many times. Number 23. I love every story in this book. And it's such a great classic cover. And it's also the cover that was used on the EC Big Book that came out in the early 70s. For those of you that know what the Big Book is, it was a collection, a hardcover edition of a lot of EC classic stories across from, Tales from the Crypt, Haunted Fear, Vault of Horror, put into one book. It was really done well, and they used that cover as the cover of the Big Book. Great cover, great story. Batman 232, first Ra's al Ghul. Here's one I don't think is that expensive, but I think it's starting to pick up. People are starting to take interest in it. We have Marvel Premiere number 10. Now, this is the first time you see Shuma Gorath in this form here. But Shuma Gorath has been mentioned previously in several other issues before Marvel Premiere 10, starting with Marvel Premiere number 5. I said it before, I'm not a big fan of the frames that Marvel was doing back then, but I think it works very well with the black and the yellow in this. And I enjoyed the story very much with Luke Cage. I did read the story. Here's another one that I think is really, really good. Wallywood cover, Tales from the Crypt number 27. Some really great stories in here. If you could find a reprint of it, check it out. And here's another EC, my favorite cover of all time, Haunted Fear number 16. Can't go wrong with this one. I'm sorry, number 12. Oh God, I forgot the number. Haunted Fear number 12. Great cover. We have two more books with the Juggernaut. Numbers 32 and number 33. Number 32 and 33. I think that these and all the other Juggernaut issues, aside from numbers 12 and 13, are a little underrated in the X-Men Silver Age run. Juggernaut showed up several more times in the X-Men Silver Age run after 13 with the two books I just showed you, and another book, 46, I believe. I think sometimes they get lost in the shuffle. And they're great covers. I think they're all great covers. So just speaking of great cover, look at this one. Again, not an expensive book, but look at this. I remember seeing this cover on the back of the Marvel Masterpieces card, Series 1, back in 1992. And when I was looking at the Ultron card, I was like, wow, look at the artwork on this. That artwork came out in the 1960s. It looked way too modern for that. But yeah, the coloring and just the fearsome look of Ultron, it was all done so well on that cover. I don't think that book's worth that much. I mean, I have a 7.5. It might be a little bit more, but how much is that? $50? Come on. Speaking of favorite covers, one of my favorite covers, second appearance of Dr. Octopus, but I've always loved this cover when he's tackling or attempting to tackle Spider-Man on that ship. Terrific cover. One of the books that I've always loved when I first started collecting all the way up to this point. Here's another X-Men book for you. X-Men number 62. Again, you know, this is a book that many people don't like. Well, what's the big deal with this book? Is it the cover? The cover's okay. But this is the book that I really, really like. I've always, when I came back to the hobby, I got it because it's the first time you see Magneto without his helmet. I've always liked horror books. Again, yes, this one's going for a little bit more money, but for many years it wasn't. And it's not just because of the recent boom that I've been showing in these latest videos. You know, that book has been spiked several years ago, but for so many decades it was just stagnant. You know, it didn't really have that much value. You could probably get a 9.0 for $120 5 years ago, for many years before that as well, and now it's several $100s. Crypt of Terror 18. This one took me so long to get, but it's this along with Tales from the Crypt 23 is one of my favorite books in my EC library, if not my favorite EC book. Not much. Two more books from X-Men. There we go again with the Juggernaut. I love this storyline, but with what is this, 102 and 103, where the X-Men go to Banshee's ancestral home, I think in Ireland, and there they find his cousin Black Tom and the Juggernaut. Another two-parter. I think this is another important story arc for anybody that likes Spider-Man. 121 and 122. Death of Gwen Stacy, Death of the Green Goblin. Classics. We have a few more here. I chose this one as my second Vault of Horror book to show. There are plenty of other great Vault of Horror books, but I chose this one because I love the cover. I think this one's a little underrated, and I enjoyed the opium story in here, Pipe Dream. It wasn't a horror-based story or supernatural-based story. It was just a really sad, depressing story. Here's another one. I think this is the second most expensive book I'm going to show. I mean, I'm still shaking my head at what I just said. This is the second most expensive, but here it is. Marvel Spotlight number 5. I have a 7.5, maybe an 8.0 copy. I can't believe it goes for what it goes for right now. And, you know, we were all saying that, you know, everything's expensive now. But again, for so many decades, that book was just teetering on a certain price. Sure, it would go up and it would go down. It would stay the same, but it was never anything so crazy as it is today. Now, this one right here is the last EC. Great issue. Very difficult to get. It's not easy to find. Haunt of Fear this is 16. No, 17. Oh, my numbers are for the ECs. I guess I'm losing it when it comes to that. But anyway, not an easy book to find. It's I don't want to say it's super rare, because it probably is not super rare, but it's rarer than some other ECs to find that book. And it's my copy's a 4.0, as you can see, but it's pretty hard to track down and can be pretty pricey. All right, last two. Amazing Spider-Man 238, the first appearance of the Hobgoblin. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I've always liked the Hobgoblin more than the Green Goblin. I understand that the Green Goblin probably meant a little bit more to Spider-Man and Spider-Man fans, but I just like the Hobgoblin. I like the look of him. I like the color scheme of him, and I like the name. I like the name better than the Green Goblin, so it's one of my favorite books of all time. And the last one, again, one of my favorite books of all time, Amazing Spider-Man number 300, the first full appearance of Venom. I can remember the day I first got this. I've read it so many times over the years. I regret not getting another copy. I mean, I have a 7580 copy, but that's fine for me. But that's definitely one of my favorite books. So I hope you enjoyed my version of Top 50 Books. I tried to avoid really, really expensive books like Amazing Fantasy 15 and X-Men #1. Although there were some pricey books in this video, I understand that. But I tried to change it up a little bit so that I could put in some books that you may not normally find on a top 50 or a top 25, as we tend to focus mainly on the value instead of some other things. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying I wanted to try to be a little bit different, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, everybody, and be safe.